Welcome, dear listeners. In this episode, we continue Oliver's story, who is currently enjoying a meal of Hutspot with Isabella and Yuri. They are also savoring a genuine glass of superlative Mars water in an observation station floating just outside Mars in space in the year 4361. But without further ado, settle in, and let's continue with the story without delay. Yuri looks at Isabella with a gleam in his eye and a wide grin on his face, saying, "As I said, the water here is perfect, a human needs nothing else, funny isn't it?" Curious, Oliver picks up his glass and takes a careful sip of the Mars water. Within a second, his eyes light up, and he looks amazed at Yuri, saying, "This is truly remarkable, what a flavor!" Yuri begins to explain, saying, "Mars has a vast amount of ice, and after a process of melting and filtering, we actually have the tastiest drink in the universe at our disposal here." Meanwhile, Isabella has taken a bite of the Hutspot and she looks satisfied at Oliver, saying, "Oliver, have you tasted it yet? It tastes exactly like it did in 1574 in Leiden. What an incredible place this is." Oliver takes a bite and says, "It's just bizarre how Dinacomp manages to pull this off." And he asks Yuri, "There are probably many other things here that will astonish us, right?" Yuri replies, saying, "It's fortunate that I am aware of the history of the world, including the times you come from. Here, there are certainly things you haven't seen before. Things that are normal for us may surprise you. We have so much to discuss because you mentioned that you're here for me. You can explain that further when we finish eating. My wife will be here soon, and she'll be thrilled to meet you." Yuri looks at the Hutspot and says, "Well, that doesn't look particularly appealing, but since it's a traditional Dutch dish, I'll give it a try. It definitely looks better than a food pill. Those are convenient, but sitting down to eat is always enjoyable." Yuri takes a bite with his fork, and after a moment, he says, "This does taste delicious indeed. It's wonderful." He grabs a small container on the table and starts turning it, saying, "A bit of freshly ground pepper on top, and it's perfect." Yuri laughs and adds, "A little human touch is always necessary." They all share a laugh. At that moment, they hear the sliding door open, and Oliver and Isabella see a woman entering, placing a bag on the floor. Yuri jumps up and hugs the woman, saying to her, "Stellara, we have incredible guests with us. Let me introduce you to them." He takes his wife's hand and says to her, "These people here are Oliver and Isabella, and they've come here specifically to find me. Can you imagine? They arrived here in the same way I did. But I met you here, and they met each other on Earth in Leiden. Dear Isabella and Oliver, this is my wife, Stellara." Stellara makes a slight bow and says, "Welcome to Space Home 4. It's lovely to meet you, but also quite extraordinary. Did you travel here the way as Yuri once told me about his travel? But first, other matters." She continues, "Is Yuri being a good host to you?" Oliver and Isabella burst into laughter, and Isabella says, "Absolutely, Stellara, very nice to meet you. We are relieved and delighted to be here." There's too much to explain, but to keep it short, Oliver and I met each other in the year 1574. Oliver found the watch, and now we travel together to all the places where people have had the watch. We have had a strong sense that people were trapped in time, but so far, I'm the only one who has traveled with Oliver. The others we found didn't want to return to their own time. We even went back to 776 BC in Olympia, Greece. But everybody wanted to stay where they were transported to. We could write books about it." Yuri says to Stellara, "Take a seat, my dear. Are you in the mood for a traditional Dutch dish? I've cooked with the Dinacomp Hutspot, following Isabella's recipe. It tastes perfect." Stellara replies, "No, thank you, Yuri. I just had something to eat on the other side of the center, but I'd love a glass of water." As Yuri pours a glass of Mars water for his wife, he suggests, Wouldn't it be a nice idea for all of us to go to Mars City Center this afternoon? Maybe Oliver and Isabella could use some new clothes, and they might enjoy looking around inside. I assume you won't be leaving within 5 minutes, will you? And he looks at Isabella and Oliver inquisitively. Stellara responds enthusiastically and says, "That sounds like a fun idea. You can see where I was born, and we can have a nice meal together on the main square. Then, after dinner, we can come back here because you'll be staying the night, won't you?" Isabella and Oliver look at each other and share a little laugh. Oliver repeats, "So, you want to go shopping in Mars and grab a bite over there later?" I'm constantly amazed here, but I understand, Stellara, that you were born on Mars, or rather, in Mars. Stellara nods and says, "Yes, Oliver, I'm a true Martian." Isabella then asks, "But can we just walk in there without drawing attention to ourselves?" Yuri explains and says, "Life on Mars is very peaceful. All wars and conflicts have been left behind on Earth. You can easily go inside to take a look around Mars. Maybe someone will glance at your jackets, but otherwise, everyone is focused on the greater good, which is existence on Mars. However, when we land, we'll pass through a small corridor, which is the health checkpoint. The system will scan your bodies briefly and let us know if there's anything wrong with your health. But you both look healthy, so that should be fine, I think." Oliver says, "I can't wait to see what they've built on Mars. In my time, we could only fantasize about traveling to Mars, let alone living there." Isabella laughs and says, "Well, in my time, we could only gaze at the moon and the stars and dream about them. Oliver told me that people walked on the moon, and I couldn't even believe that, and now I'm about to take a look and go shopping on Mars with you all? I find it unbelievable. I used to be all about antiquities and excavations, but this is something entirely different. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Just let me know when we're ready to go, because I'm incredibly curious." Stellara looks at Yuri and says, "Do we need to take anything to Mars, darling?" And Yuri replies, "No, sweetheart, today was quiet, the first moon delivery will be back here tomorrow. I think we're ready to go." Then Yuri turns to Oliver and Isabella and says, "Watch this." He takes the plates from the table. The drawer from which Yuri took the plates opens by itself, and then Yuri places the plates in the drawer, which closes on its own. "There we go, that's done too," says Yuri. Then he looks at Isabella and Oliver again and chuckles at their astonished faces. "I know what you're thinking," he says. "I've read and seen in old films from your time that you had to wash dishes by hand, and there was just a machine that did the dishes for you. Here, everything keeps getting easier. But I'm ready to go too, and what about you, Oliver?" Oliver finishes his glass of water and says, "I'd love one more glass of this delicious water, and then we can go. I'm very curious." Yuri pours another full glass of Mars water for everyone, and after the glasses are empty, Stellara is the first to stand up and says, "Come on, let's go, I'm eager to shop." Yuri, Isabella, and Oliver laugh and follow Stellara to the sliding door through which they entered. They take a staircase down to another door that slides open for them. It looks like they are stepping into another room, which is set up like the cockpit of an airplane. Yuri says in a friendly tone, "Take a seat in one of these chairs, and it's especially important that you fasten and keep your seatbelt on during the flight." Without initially realizing it, Oliver and Isabella have boarded a small spacecraft that will take them to Mars. Oliver says, "I've been on an airplane before. Spacecraft existed in my time, but this is truly remarkable." Yuri and Stellara have taken seats in the front, and Yuri turns around and asks, "So, ready for takeoff?" Isabella and Oliver nod in agreement, and Yuri says, "All right, here we go." With a click, the spacecraft detaches from the large space home number 4, and they fly noiselessly in a straight line towards Mars. Oliver and Isabella are in awe, and Isabella takes Oliver's hand and says, "This is really something special, I never expected this. I'm so incredibly glad you brought me out of Leiden and that I traveled with you. Oliver laughs and says, I'm also super happy that you came with me. Isabella and Oliver gaze through the windshield of the spacecraft they are in, watching in awe as the planet Mars rapidly approaches. After a few minutes, the entire windshield is filled with the red glow of the planet. Yuri says with a laugh, hold on tight because it gets a bit windy on Mars. He playfully steers the vehicle, which begins to shake due to the intense wind outside, toward an opening in the ground that has just opened in front of them. Through the rear window, Oliver and Isabella see the hatch quickly closing behind them as Yuri safely lands them on a platform among several others, each holding various vehicles. Some of the platforms are empty, and Oliver and Isabella notice an unmanned cart being driven toward their platform. Stellara says, well, what did you think? That was pretty fast, wasn't it? We'll go through the health check with this cart, and if everything is okay, the car will bring us to the city center. You'll be amazed at how well everything is organized here. Go ahead and unbuckle your seatbelts, then just follow me, and Yuri will shut off the power here. Oliver, as he unbuckles his seatbelt, says, this was a beautiful journey through space. When I time travel, I see nothing and am surrounded by white light. This was amazing. He helps Isabella with her seatbelt, and together they follow Stellara. The door of their vehicle has already slid open. No stairs are needed as they step directly onto the ground next to the cart where Stellara is waiting, saying, come on, feel free to get in. Oliver and Isabella stand in amazement, not knowing what to make of their surroundings. They find themselves in an enormous cave that is pleasantly illuminated and neatly arranged. Everything looks highly organized, yet the environment feels very natural. Inside this cave, there's no wind, the temperature is perfect, and along the edges of the vast space, trees grow, and there are even a few waterfalls visible. And Oliver says, it's incredible, how did they manage to do this? While Isabella and Oliver also find seats in the cart, they see Yuri pressing a button on the platform's console. Yuri says, in your time on Earth, people used gasoline, diesel, gas, electricity, and hydrogen. They became wise when they started thinking about harnessing the energy of the sun. We will get later to that. Here, we derive energy from stardust. And if you've looked around carefully, you've seen that we have plenty of that. Yuri bursts into laughter once again. Yuri also steps into the cart, and they silently glide along a fixed track towards an exit from the cave. Isabella and Oliver are wide-eyed as they pass by all the vehicles. All those vehicles look somewhat similar, just varying in size. They approach a door that slides open for them, and they enter a white corridor where the cart stops for 10 seconds. Next to Isabella, a hatch opens, and a friendly voice says, could you please look this way? Isabella gazes in astonishment at the screen emerging from the wall, and the voice continues, please remain still. Before Isabella can respond, the same voice from the screen says, thank you. Your eyes are back to normal strength. Have a pleasant day. And the screen disappears into the wall. Isabella looks surprised at Oliver and then at Yuri, saying, I think I can indeed see more sharply. Yuri and Stellara laugh, and Yuri reassures her. We know exactly what we're doing here. The computer just adjusted your eyes in an instant. It's not done with lasers like in Oliver's time, it's done using sound waves. The door on the other side slides open, and Isabella looks around in wonder. She says, Oliver, squeeze my hand because I can't believe my eyes. This is incredible. Gently, Oliver squeezes Isabella's hand and says, I don't know what I'm experiencing either, Isabella, but these are truly remarkable and fantastic things. I wouldn't have wanted to miss this. The cart exits the tunnel, and Isabella and Oliver are greeted by an even larger cave, bustling with activity yet radiating a sense of tranquility. The cave resembles a vast shopping center with shops both upstairs and downstairs. Isabella and Oliver notice many trees and several waterfalls along the walls. The soft lights cast a warm glow throughout the cave, creating a welcoming atmosphere. They are in awe. Stellara turns around and says enthusiastically, "Welcome to Mars City Center. It's always nice to relax here, do some shopping, or enjoy a peaceful meal. What do you think?" Oliver and Isabella look at each other in astonishment and take another good look around. The city inside the cave sprawls out before them, and from top to bottom in the cave, they see people walking back and forth. People stroll through the streets and across the bridges that hang through the cave. Some people are chatting, and Oliver and Isabella notice that there are terraces on different levels where people are dining. Oliver says, "I find it incredibly fascinating to see all of this. But you call this the city center, right?" Stellara replies, "Indeed, this is our city center. There are other caves with residential areas, and there's also an enormous sports cave. They've created a huge park there where it's lovely for picnics or sports. Yuri and I have an apartment here with a balcony that offers a real starry view." She chuckles. "But let's take a stroll through some streets first. Maybe you'll see something nice you'd like to buy. Perhaps a new jacket, Oliver?" Oliver looks back at Stellara with a smile and says, "I can't part with this jacket because I received it from Galileo." Stellara's eyes widen, and she asks, "You've met Galileo, in person?" And Oliver responds, "Indeed, Stellara. Galileo explained to me how the celestial maps work, so I can navigate through time with the watch." Stellara sighs and says, "It's incredibly special to hear, Oliver. I wish I could have been there. So, this is his jacket?" She touches the jacket for a moment and falls silent. Oliver says, "Once this adventure is over, I'll come to pick you up, and we'll pay a visit to Galileo. How does that sound?" Stellara looks at Oliver in disbelief but realizes that Oliver isn't joking. She says with a smile, "I'll hold you to that, Oliver. That sounds fantastic. But I think we can revisit that later. Come this way." They step out of the little vehicle and walk down the first street. At the end stands a beautiful fountain, and Yuri says, "All the streets lead to this fountain. It's always nice to take a stroll here." Isabella asks, "I have a question. I heard you mention that you have an apartment here with a balcony. But how can you sit outside when there are those terrible storms outside?" Yuri and Isabella laugh, and Yuri explains, saying, "You'll see it later. It's a fantastically beautiful apartment, indeed, with a balcony. But there's a very thick window between the universe and us, so you're not really outside, so to speak." At that moment, the four of them walk past a lovely terrace with chairs and tables, offering a beautiful view of the cave. Yuri says, "Come, let's sit here for a moment. Later, we'll be higher up in the cave, and you'll have a different view." Dear listeners, here, we allow Oliver and Isabella to catch their breath on a cozy terrace in the city center of Mars. Isabella's eyes have been brought back into sharp focus thanks to the technology within a matter of seconds. And Stellara and Yuri are not done yet with their tour of Mars, plus the four of them have plenty more to discuss. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and please do like and subscribe so you won't miss any of Oliver the Time Traveler's upcoming adventures. Beware of unfamiliar watches, sleep well, and until next time.